My name's Kyle. I'm 26, and I found out my sister got a car for her birthday when I got a ticket in the mail. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. It was one of those speeding camera violations dated 2 weeks earlier, and it listed a vehicle I didn't recognize, a silver Hyundai Elantra. I drive a truck. I don't even like sedans. I actually laughed when I opened it, thinking it was some scam or clerical error. But it had my full name, my address, and my driver's license number tied to the registration. That's when I started getting that sinking feeling in my stomach. The one where you just know something's off, but your brain's still catching up. I called the DMV first to make sure it wasn't identity theft or something worse. The woman on the phone confirmed it was legit. The car was registered to me. She read back the VIN number and everything. Still had no idea how that was even possible. I'd never signed anything. I'd never even seen the car. Hit me. My mom had mentioned a few weeks ago that my sister Jenna got a car for her 18th birthday. It was this big family dinner thing I skipped because I had work late and, honestly, I didn't want to deal with my mom's husband, Mark. But now, all the puzzle pieces started to fit and none of them made sense. My name's Kyle. I'm 26, and I found out my sister got a car for her birthday when I got a ticket in the mail. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. It was one of those speeding camera violations dated 2 weeks earlier, and it listed a vehicle I didn't recognize. A silver Hyundai Elantra. I drive a truck. I don't even like sedans. I actually laughed when I opened it, thinking it was some scam or clerical error. But it had my full name, my address, and my driver's license number tied to the registration. That's when I started getting that sinking feeling in my stomach. The one where you just know something's off, but your brain's still catching up. I checked the plate on the ticket, and it wasn't even close to mine. That's when I went back to the envelope and saw the DMV return address. It wasn't a scam. It was real. I stood in the kitchen for a solid minute, trying to replay anything in my head that could connect me to this car. I hadn't co-signed anything. I hadn't lent my ID out. I rarely even talk to my family unless it's a holiday or someone needs something. So I grabbed my keys and headed to my mom's place, because I knew there was only one place to start. I called the DMV first, just to make sure it wasn't identity theft or some weird system glitch. The woman on the phone confirmed it was legit. That car was registered to me. She read back the VIN number and everything. I still had no idea how that was even possible. I'd never signed anything. I'd never even seen the car. And then it hit me. My mom had mentioned a few weeks ago that my sister Jenna got a car for her 18th birthday. It was this big family dinner thing I skipped because I had work late and, honestly, I didn't want to deal with my mom's husband. Mark, he's the kind of guy who always tries to alpha every room he's in, and ever since he married my mom, I've kept my distance. But now, all the puzzle pieces started to fit, and none of them made sense. Why would a car gifted to Jenna be in my name? And how did Mark get access to my information? I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. I had 100 questions before I even knocked on the door. When I got to my mom's place, Jenna's car was right there in the driveway. Silver Hyundai Elantra, exact plate as on the ticket. I parked on the street and just stood there for a second, staring at it. It looked brand new. Shiny, clean, like something out of a dealership lot. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. My mom answered, surprised to see me. Before I could even say anything, she smiled and said, "Oh, you finally came too. See Jenna's new car?" I didn't even respond. I just asked her if Mark was home. She said he was in the garage, and I didn't wait for an invite. I went straight there. He was pretending to mess with some tools, but I know he heard me come in. I asked him straight out why there was a car registered in my name. His reaction wasn't confusion or surprise. He actually smiled. Mark wiped his hands on a rag and said, "Yeah, I figured you'd see that sooner or later, just like that. No apology, no explanation, just like it was some kind of joke." I asked him how the hell he pulled it off, and he said, "I used some of your old paperwork your mom had. Stored, insurance forms, stuff with your signature." I felt my blood pressure spike instantly. I told him that was fraud, and he just shrugged. Said it was just temporary, that they needed someone with a clean credit record to get the plates and insurance set up, that it'd all be transferred to Jenna soon. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wasn't asked. I wasn't told. He had literally used my identity to register a car. Now it was being driven around by an 18-year-old with no clue about the risk that put me in. My hands were shaking at that point. I felt humiliated, used, and worst of all, my mom was right there in the hallway, just silently watching it all go down. I turned to my mom and asked her if she knew. She didn't deny it. She just said something like, "We didn't think it'd be a big deal. You're not even using your credit for anything right now." It felt like a punch to the face. Like I was some resource they could just tap into whenever they needed, and not even a person with boundaries. I told them both that they needed to take the car off my name immediately. Mark laughed again like I was being dramatic and said I was overreacting. I reminded them I could get in serious legal trouble if something happened. Unpaid tickets, accidents, insurance fraud, all of it could come back on me. And again, they acted like it was no big deal, like I was the crazy one. I told Mark I was going to the police if they didn't fix it. He called me ungrateful. My mom started crying. Jenna finally came downstairs, clueless, holding car keys in her hand, asking what was going on. I didn't even look at Jenna. I just left. I couldn't deal with all three of them spinning it around like I was being unreasonable. When I got home, I spent the next 2 hours on the phone, with the DMV, with my bank, with a friend who's a paralegal. Everything pointed to one thing. I needed to file a police report. That same night, I drove down to the station and told them everything. They were surprisingly understanding. One of the officers even said this kind of thing happens more often than you'd think. Parents, step-parents, siblings, all using each other's info to get cars, credit cards, apartments. It's still a crime, though. I filled out a statement and gave them copies of the ticket, the registration notice, and even some old forms I found at my place showing my signature that Mark could have copied. It felt gross, like I was turning in my own family. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I was done being the safe one they could use and discard. The fallout didn't take long. Mark called me the next morning, screaming into the phone, demanding to know why there were officers at his door, asking about the car. I hung up on him. My mom texted me shortly after, begging me to drop the report, saying it was just a misunderstanding. She kept using words like family and trust, and how I was tearing us apart. That made me laugh, honestly. What kind of trust was she talking about? The kind where they use your identity and gamble your financial future without even telling you? I didn't reply. I was already in the process of putting a fraud alert on my credit and contacting an attorney. The more I thought about it, the more angry I got. It wasn't just about the car. It was the pattern. Every time Mark needed something, my mom bent the rules for him. Every time Jenna wanted something, she got it. I was just the guy who never made trouble, so they figured they could do whatever they wanted with me. What hit the hardest wasn't even the fraud, though. It was realizing that my mom had chosen Mark over me again. She always did. When I was 17 and Mark yelled in my face and shoved me for talking back, she told me to apologize to him. When I came home from college one weekend and found Jenna going through my boxers looking for old jewelry, she said it was just curiosity. There was always a reason to excuse them and a reason to silence me. I think that's what finally broke something in me. Not the car, the ticket, but that long, exhausting realization that I was never going to matter as much as keeping the peace in that house. That no one, not even my own mother, was going to stand up for me. And if I didn't draw the line here, I'd be stuck playing this same role for the rest of my life. The reliable one, the quiet one, the disposable one. I ended up going. No contact with them for a while, deleted their numbers, blocked them on everything, and told a few mutual relatives not to give out my info. It felt weird at first, like I was cutting off a limb or something, but then the silence started to feel peaceful. For the first time in years, I didn't have to brace myself before answering the phone. I didn't have to worry about what new mess Mark had made or what guilt trip my mom was going to lay on me next. I started focusing on my own life more, paid off some debt, picked up extra shifts, even started therapy. It helped more than I expected. The therapist told me something that stuck. You can love someone and still not let them hurt you. It sounds simple, but it cracked something open in me. I'd spent years thinking that to be a good son meant absorbing the hits, keeping quiet, being understanding no matter what. Turns out that's not love. That's codependency. About 2 months after everything, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from my mom. It was 4 pages long, and I read it sitting on the floor of my apartment, next to a cold cup of coffee. She didn't apologize. Not really. She said she regretted how things had unfolded, that she hoped we could put the past behind us, but it was full of justifications. She said Mark had been under stress, that Jenna was going through a rough patch, and that she thought I'd understand eventually. I put the letter back in the envelope and slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't throw it out, but I also didn't respond. I didn't need to. I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for years. I didn't owe them forgiveness just because we share blood, especially not when the only reason they reached out was to make themselves feel better. A few weeks later, I ran into Jenna at the grocery store. She looked surprised, like she hadn't expected to see me in public like a normal person. She smiled awkwardly and said something like, "Hey, stranger." I just nodded and kept walking. I could feel her watching me as I passed, probably trying to decide if she should follow me or let it go. She ended up trailing behind me for a few aisles, then finally caught up when I was grabbing some pasta. She said she missed having me around and that things haven't been the same without you. I told her I wasn't interested in pretending everything was fine. She got defensive, said I was making a big deal out of just a car. I laughed. That's when I realized we were never going to be on the same page. To her, it was just a car. To me, it was the last straw in a lifetime of being treated like I didn't matter. I left my cart in the aisle and walked out. That moment solidified it for me. I was done hoping they'd change. Done hoping that someday they'd wake up and realize how much damage they'd done. Some people never get it, and you waste years of your life waiting for an apology that isn't coming. I don't hate them. I really don't. But I don't trust them, and I sure as hell don't need them. That's a hard thing to admit about your own family. There's this deep cultural expectation that family comes first, that blood is thicker, that you're supposed to forgive and move on no matter what. But I've learned that loyalty without boundaries just becomes self-destruction. I'm 33 now, and I've got a stable job, a good circle of friends, and peace in my own space. I don't miss the chaos. I don't miss feeling like a second-class citizen in my own life. I miss the idea of family, maybe, but not the version I grew up with. A few months after that, got a text from my uncle, my dad's brother, saying my mom had been asking about me again. He said she was telling people she didn't know why I cut contact, that I just disappeared one day and never looked back. That stung in a weird way. Like, after everything, she still managed to twist the story to make herself look like the victim. I told my uncle I wasn't interested in setting the record straight with her. I didn't feel like defending my own pain to people who chose not to see it in the first place. He understood. He's been quiet supportive, actually, said he. Always thought the way they treated me was off, but didn't want to get in the middle. That phrase used to piss me off, but I get it more now. People avoid confrontation like the plague. They'd rather keep things smooth on the surface. Even if it means ignoring what's rotting underneath, there are still days where I wonder what it would have been like if they had been different, if my mom had stood up for me even once. Mark hadn't treated me like competition from the moment he moved in. If Jenna had been less cruel, or maybe just more self-aware, but that kind of thinking is a trap. It's like staring at a locked door, hoping it opens, knowing full well you don't even have the key. I don't let myself go down that road too often anymore. Therapy helped with that, and so did time. I've had to build a new sense of family from scratch, people who actually show up, listen, care. It's not huge, but it's real. I have friends who check in on me, a boss who respects me, and neighbors who say hi when I pass them in the hall. It's funny how all the little things that used to feel insignificant now feel like proof that I'm okay, that I'm not invisible like they made me feel for so long. One thing I've noticed is how quiet my life feels now. Not empty, just quiet. There's no tension humming in the background, no walking into a room and feeling like I'm about to be interrogated, no second-guessing every word that comes out of my mouth. I used to think that kind of peace was boring, When I was younger, I'd crave chaos because at least it felt like something was happening, like I was alive. But now I get it. Peace isn't boring. It's safety. It's waking up without dread. Sitting on your chest. It's eating dinner and not bracing for someone to make a comment that ruins your whole night. I've started cooking more, reading more, even picking up my guitar again. Things that never felt worth doing because they'd just be interrupted or mocked or dismissed. I don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. That realization changed everything for me. Every once in a while, I still get emails from Jenna. Short ones, like, "Hope you're doing well," or "Miss you sometimes." I never reply. I don't think she understands that the silence is the response. That I'm not holding a grudge, I just don't owe her anything. I've let go of needing closure from people who never cared about giving it. That's been the hardest part, honestly. Accepting that the people you wanted love from the most might never have been capable of giving it in the first place. It doesn't mean they're evil, it just means they're limited. I've had to stop expecting water from a stone. My life is better without the weight of those unmet expectations. I don't feel guilty about that anymore. And that, in itself, feels like a kind of freedom I never thought I'd get last Thanksgiving. I got invited to a dinner hosted by a coworker. Nothing fancy. Just a few people who didn't have anywhere else to go. We all brought something too. Share. I made mac and cheese. The kind with 3 different cheeses. And the crunchy topping used to be the only thing I was allowed to cook on holidays back home. When I put it on the table, someone said it smelled like their grandma's recipe. And suddenly we were talking about childhood memories and traditions. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider during a holiday. Nobody asked about my parents or why I wasn't with family. It was just understood that some people make new families out of whoever's willing to show up. I left that night feeling full in every way. On the walk home, I cried a little, not from sadness, but from realizing I'd finally found a version of warmth that wasn't conditional. It's weird to think that everything changed in just one day, that random Saturday when I walked into that house and finally saw it all for what it was. I used to beat myself up for not seeing it sooner, for wasting so many years trying to be what they wanted. But now I look at that version of me with compassion. He didn't know better. He thought love was something you had to earn. Something you proved by staying quiet, by being useful, by shrinking. That version of me tried so hard to make it work, even when nothing he did was ever enough. I don't hate him for it. If anything, I thank him. Because without his stubbornness and pain and desperate hope, I wouldn't have had the clarity or strength to walk away when the time finally came. That day broke something in me, but it also started to rebuild something else. Since then, I've started going to therapy. At first, I didn't think I needed it. I thought just getting out was enough, that moving on meant I was healed. But little things would creep in, like how I'd flinch when someone raised their voice, even if they weren't yelling at me, or how I'd apologize for things that weren't my fault, or feel guilty for relaxing. My therapist helped me unpack a lot of stuff I didn't even realize I was carrying. I'm learning to trust myself again, to recognize that I'm allowed to take up space, to be seen and heard without fearing punishment. That kind of growth doesn't happen overnight. Some days I still feel like I'm waiting for the floor to fall out, but those days are fewer now. Most of the time I feel steady, like I've got my own back, finally. There's still no real resolution. With my family, I haven't spoken to my mom since that day. My brother texted me once about something random, like nothing had happened. I didn't reply. I don't hate them, and maybe one day we'll talk again, but it'll have to be on different terms. I'm not willing to walk back into that house and play the role they wrote for me. I'm done performing. I used to think being part of a family meant loyalty no matter what, even if it hurt. Now I think it means showing up honestly and expecting the same in return. If that's not possible, then I'd rather be alone than pretending everything's fine while my insides are screaming. I've made peace with the silence. It's louder than I expected, but it's also honest, and I'll take honesty over comfort every time. One thing that surprised me the most was how people outside the family reacted once I started opening up. Friends I hadn't talked to in a while reached out, some just to say they'd been through something similar. A coworker told me quietly that she cut her dad out after years of being called a disappointment for not going into medicine. Another guy from church told me about how his stepmother used to make him clean while his siblings played. I didn't know how common these kinds of stories were. For so long, I thought I was the broken one, like I was the exception. But the more I talked, the more I realized how many people walk around carrying invisible bruises. It made me feel less alone, and more importantly, it made me realize that keeping it all in only helps the people who hurt you. I still carry a lot of questions I may never get answers to. It's like if my mom ever really saw me as a son, or just as something to manage. Or if my stepdad resented me for existing in a house he wanted to control. I wonder if my brother knew what was going on and chose to ignore it, or if he really was that checked out. Sometimes I think about writing them a letter not to reconnect, but just to say my piece and finally be done. But then I remind myself that healing isn't about dragging people back into your pain. It's about learning to live without needing their validation. So instead, I journal, or I pray, or I go for walks and talk out loud like someone's listening. And maybe someone is. Or maybe I'm just learning how to finally listen to myself. One of the hardest parts has been rewriting the story I used to tell myself about what love looks like. For most of my life, I thought love meant enduring, sacrificing, staying quiet. So things didn't blow up. I thought if I was good enough, quiet enough, useful enough, they'd eventually soften. But all that did was teach them how to hurt me without consequence. It's weird how your body learns to flinch before your mind catches up. Even now, when someone's kind to me, there's a part of me waiting for it to flip. Teach myself that love isn't supposed to feel like a test I'm constantly failing. I'm dating someone new. Her name's Riley Ond. She's patient with me in a way I didn't know people could be. She doesn't make me feel small. Dawn. And the crazy part is, I keep waiting for her to leave, and she hasn't. That's been the most healing part. That said, I'm still learning how not to carry shame like it's mine to hold. I spent years feeling like the family screw-up, the failure who didn't fit the mold. I used to apologize for things I hadn't done wrong just to keep the peace. But peace that comes at the cost of your own self-worth isn't peace. It's surrender. I've had to unlearn so much. I've had to go back and reread every memory with new eyes. Realize that being the scapegoat wasn't a reflection of who I was. It was just the role they needed someone to play. And I'm done playing it. What? Some nights I still replay old fights in my head and wonder if I could have said something different, done something better. But deep down, I know that kid was doing the best he could with what he had. And now, I get to do better, not for them, but for me. I've also started setting firmer boundaries, which is something I never thought I'd be able to do. My mom sent me a birthday text last year. Just happy birthday. Hope you're well. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a sterile message, like nothing ever happened. I stared at it for an hour before deciding not to respond. It wasn't an easy choice. The old me would have replied with something polite, hoping it might open the door to something better. But I'm tired of knocking on locked doors. I didn't block her, but I didn't engage either. That small act of silence felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. It's weird how not replying can feel louder than yelling. I don't hate her. I don't think I ever really did. I just don't trust her, and that's enough to keep my distance. I've accepted that I may never get the closure I once begged for. Some wounds close without neat endings. One thing I've learned is that healing doesn't come in a straight line. Some days I feel strong, like I've truly let go of it all. Other days, something random, a smell, a tone of voice, even a holiday, ad on TV, pulls me right back to being that kid again, sitting at the dinner table trying to make himself invisible. I've come to accept those moments as part of the process. Try not to judge myself for still flinching. That boy still lives in me somewhere, and he deserves compassion too. I talk to him sometimes in my head. I tell him we made it out. I tell him he doesn't have to prove anything anymore. And weirdly, I think that helps. Not in some cheesy, inspirational way. It's just in a real, quiet way that makes it easier to breathe. One of the biggest surprises came last Thanksgiving. I hadn't seen anyone from the family in over 2 years, but my cousin Nate reached out of the blue. He said he'd always thought the way I was treated was messed up and that he just didn't know how to step in back then. He invited me to a small gathering at his place. No pressure. I almost didn't go, but I did. and it was normal. No eggshells, no passive-aggressive jabs, no tension hanging in the air. We ate, laughed, watched football, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was with people who saw me for who I really was. Not the scapegoat, not the disappointment, just a person worth being around. It didn't fix everything, but it reminded me that family doesn't have to mean pain. Sometimes it just means people who choose you. That night, driving home, I sat in my car, outside my apartment for a long time. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn a version of love that was always conditional. I thought about how many times I'd begged for acceptance from people who had already decided I wasn't enough. And I realized something. I don't need it anymore. Not from them. I have people now who care about me because of who I am, not what I can offer or how quiet I can stay. That realization hit me harder than any argument or breakdown ever did. It wasn't dramatic. It was just this slow, steady peace I hadn't felt in years. I went inside, made a cup of tea, and for once, I didn't feel like I had to brace for anything. A few weeks ago, walked past a bakery that smelled exactly like the one my mom used to take me to when I was a kid. For a second, it hit me like a wave, the warm sugar, the old glass display case, her hand tugging mine toward the counter. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just stood there for a minute, took a deep breath, and kept walking. It felt like proof that I'd made it through the storm. Not untouched, not unscarred, but through. Some memories still sting, but they don't own me anymore. I don't have to rewrite the past. I just have to live differently going forward, and I am. It's the win I carry quietly even when no one claps for it. So yeah, that's my story. Or at least the part of it I'm ready to tell. I'm not here to paint myself as a hero or make anyone the villain. I'm just a guy who finally stopped trying to earn love from people who only gave it with strings attached. I don't have some grand conclusion or dramatic turnaround to offer. Things just settled. They got quieter. And that silence has been the most healing thing of all. I still have bad days. Still wonder what could have been. But I don't live there anymore. I'm building something better now, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the point. Not fixing what's broken, but learning how to live without needing to.